Well, good morning. So we got a call. It's just a 50-hour service this morning on one of the new Bobcat excavators. This is an R2 series excavator, like an E45, I think. And 50-hour service now, you know, we've been used to the 50-hour service for many years just being this is the initial 50-hour service after you buy a new machine. We've kind of been used to that being just a engine oil filter and engine oil change. But now with the R series loaders and the R2 series excavators, we're not changing the engine oil and filter at 50 hours. All that's being done at the factory before the machine is shipped, or even before the engine is shipped to the factory. So on the R2 series excavators, we are literally just doing hydraulic filters and the final drives. We're changing the oil in the final drive. So that's what the 50-hour service is now. So it's kind of an easy thing to do. It only takes about an hour and a half, but majority of that time is driving. I've got well, it's going to be two and a half hours round trip, so about an hour and 15 minutes in each direction. So we made it out to our E42 with the 50-hour service, and what's cool about these R2 machines is they will actually tell you inside the cab on the screen exactly what you need to do and when you need to do it. Let's take a look at that. So this has got the 7-inch touchscreen. If we go over to our service, it'll tell you service overdue 33 hours up here on the top. So I'm not going to record a service yet. I'm going to wait till we get done with it, but view service schedule. Right here it says replace the case drain filter, which we're going to do. Replace the hydraulic filter, again 33 hours overdue. And replace the final drive, the fluid in the travel motors, is what that says. So we do that every 1,000 hours, but we do it the first 50 hours, kind of as a break-in period. And the ones in red are the ones that are due. This is everything that tells you, you know, all the other service items and when they're due. So we're just concentrating on the three: the case drain filter, the hydraulic filter, and the travel motor oil. So I'm just going to start with the final drive here because it takes a little longer for this oil to drain. You can see I just got a little 1-gallon jug that I cut out, so it kind of fits right up under this lower hole. Now sometimes these final drives can be pressurized. They can have a little pressure in there, and we don't want that oil to blow back on us, you know, by pulling this lower plug out first. So I always pull out the top plug. Yep, I felt a good burst of air come out of there. So I've pulled out the bottom plug before, and yeah, I got a little oil bath. Now you see there's 3 plugs. I got one at the 12 o'clock position, one at the 9 o'clock, and one at the 6 o'clock. This will be our fill plug. This is our level plug at the 9 o'clock position. And it's actually full right up to that. I don't want to drip, make a mess, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull out the plug at the 6 o'clock position. And I'm just going to let that final drive oil leak out or drain out while we do the hydraulic system. So to gain access to the hydraulic filter and the case drain filter, I need to first pull this side cover off. Using my 13 millimeter, we got one little nut up here that we got to loosen up. And then using my 15 millimeter, remove 4 bolts. I guess 2 bolts, 2 nuts that hold the side cover on. Now, kind of putting my forma funnel in here, I'm going to drill a hole in the bottom of the hydraulic filter. And that way the filter can drain the head a little bit, so when I actually break it loose, I don't pour oil everywhere and just make a huge mess. Now, a tip on these R2 machines, I gotta cut these zip ties here. Get that out of the way. This hose right here comes directly from the tank. So we've got to use some hose pinch pliers to pinch this hose off, because if we don't, when we pull the filter off, we're literally going to drain our whole hydraulic tank. Which brings me to another point, is this tank is pressurized. So before we start the process, I just want to loosen up the cap. I can hear the pressure kind of bleed out, and then screw the cap back on tight. And then I'm going to, this large hose right here is the one I need to pinch off. All right. And then using a self-tapping screw, I just drill a little hole right here in the bottom of the filter. See, it comes out real slow until we drill another hole in the top up here to give it a way to kind of breathe. So now I got a good hydraulic flow, and that's just going to drain the filter. So again, just so I don't make a mess. These are just little tips and tricks that I've learned over time. So that's slowed down quite a bit, and that kind of tells me that we've drained down a little bit, so that I'm not going to make a mess. I'm going to put my screw back in that hole, and that'll kind of keep it from leaking while we take the filter off. See how I can pull that filter off and oil's just not gushing out. It's dripping a little bit, but it's still catching in my my funnel. But it's just not an uncontrolled gush out there, I guess. A little bit of oil on the O-ring of my new hydraulic filter. Now I've got the filter on, all I gotta do is sign and date it, but I can now release my hose pinch clamp off of that big main hydraulic hose. So, and again, you'll notice, or maybe you didn't notice, I put this filter on dry. I did not put hydraulic oil in the filter, and that's going to introduce a lot of air into our system. But I verified this with Bobcat. They do not want you to pre-fill any of the filters. It just kind of reduces the possibility of getting contamination into the system. So I put them on dry, and we've got to bleed the air out of the system. It does kind of have a bleed screw up here on the cooler, or not a screw, but a little tap. It's kind of a factory fill port and an air bleed port, but yeah, I don't really find that works great for me. We just have to run the machine through the functions to kind of bleed all that air out of there. Oh. And now for the case drain filter, I'm going to break that filter loose, and then I'm going to pull the whole filter head out of there. Again, this is just how I like to do it, just using a 10 millimeter. The filter head's just got 2 little 10 millimeter screws on top of it. And that way there's enough slack in there where I can kind of pull this out, and we can put my forma funnel under there again. catch any residual oil. Again, just trying to keep from making a mess. Now this hose here, again, it comes from the tank. So if we don't use another set of hose pinch pliers and pinch that off, when we unscrew this filter, we're just going to be draining the tank as fast as we can get the filter off and get a new one on. So and then again, the new filter, just a little oil on the O-ring, and it's going on dry, you know, where I'm not pre-filling this filter, and that is factory recommendations. Just snug, does not have to be tight. Take my hose pinch pliers back off and send her back home. And that's how I change the hydraulic filter and the case drain filter without ever spilling a drop of oil inside the frame of the machine here, because I'm in the field, you know what I mean? And guys in the shop, they can spill oil everywhere and they can take it out the wash bay and clean it up. Or if you don't have access to water, you want to kind of prevent making a mess on these machines. So that's how I did it. Now that's all we got to do over here as far as the hydraulic filters. So now I can put this side of the machine back together. But before I do, I'm going to go ahead to go over to the other final drive and get it draining. So it's draining while I'm marking over here. So now that I've got the rest of the machine put back together, I can go ahead and start filling this final drive. I'm using Bobcat's 80W90 for the final drive, and just by experience, and I guess hell, you can look in the manual too, is that I know that this holds almost exactly 1 quart. So I'm just going to fill it from up here. Now you can see I got a little tip on here that I fill it with. Now sometimes when you put that tip in there, depending on where the planetary is, you might have a gear right in front of this fill hole. So you might want to fill it from the side, and the gear might even be there. So you might have to travel the motor just a little bit to get that planetary gear out of your way, and it just makes it a lot easier and quicker to fill this up. And so right now it is not in my way, so I'm just going to go ahead and start squeezing it in. So essentially that's all there is to doing the 50-hour service on this R2 series E42 machine. And to finish up this, well, first of all, let me say thank you so much for supporting the channel, watching these videos. If they helped you out at all, I mean, a lot of people, they still think the 50-hour service is changing the oil in an oil filter, you know, just little tips and tricks like that. If it helped you out at all, please, a thumbs up on the channel would be great. I'll never ask you to subscribe, but I'd love to have you. And to finish up this service, what I'm going to do is make sure I top off all the fluids. I got to run the machine, fill up those hydraulic filters, then I got to top off my hydraulic tank. We're going to check our coolant, we're going to check our engine oil, and we're going to grease the machine and just do a few other inspections on belts and stuff like that, just to make sure it's good to go for the customer. So I'm going to get that finished up. Thanks for watching.